Let's talk about cognitive development in adolescence. Now, when we talk about cognitive development, I often start with Piaget. I'll go ahead and continue the tradition. Remember, Piaget had 4 stages of cognitive and intellectual development. We have already gone over sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational. We are ready for the last stage, the formal operational stage, which can be reached from 11 onward. Not everybody reaches it though. Some people never reach formal operational thinking, but if they do, what would this involve? This involves more systematic logic and the ability to think about abstract ideas. Remember, the concrete operational thinker is limited. They can only think rationally or logically about experiences, examples that are directly known to them. If you're a formal operational thinker, you are freed up from that limitation. You can use your imagination. You could imagine situations that you've never personally been in. You can detect hidden meaning and indirectly stated information. And so you gain, in mathematics, you gain the ability to multiply unread numbers. Remember how in algebra you have to solve for the unknown, right? Your abstract thinking helps with that. And in social studies, you can think big picture instead of memorizing a bunch of definitions, or at least that's something that could and should happen in a school setting. So the ability to consider things like global effects and problems, big picture stuff. And then in science, learning about hypotheticals, about invisible aspects, invisible particles, distant galaxies that you have not personally seen, but you can learn about them. And, you know, like when you learn about the brain and you cannot look inside someone's brain, you know, maybe you'll be lucky and you'll end up in a neuroanatomy lab or something, but a lot of times when people learn about the brain, they just have to imagine it. They have to use their formal operational skills. All right, now as I said, not everybody reaches that, but if you do, it's typically going to happen in adolescence. Now, adolescents are not perfect though. Even if they've reached formal operational thinking, there are still some characteristic cognitive errors that are very frequently seen in adolescence. And part of these can be explained with some of the changes we've talked about previously, like the limbic system developing before the prefrontal cortex, that their hormones are rushing and making them very focused on themselves, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But what are some of the things that we see? The first one is adolescent egocentrism. We've used the word egocentrism previously when we talked about preschoolers, pre-operational thinkers. This is a little bit different. For the pre-operational egocentrist, they just kind of don't get that other people have different perspectives. With an adolescent exhibiting adolescent egocentrism, they focus on their self, but not because they don't get that other people have perspectives, just theirs feels particularly relevant and important. It's just like, this is the one that's screaming to me, my perspective. So they can be a little self-centered. So you see this a lot, ages 10 to 13, where they focus on themselves to the exclusion of others. You know, my needs, what I want, my perspective. You also see a phenomenon called rumination. If you've ever heard that term, sometimes people have heard that term if they know anything about certain types of animals, like livestock, like cattle. You know, there are certain animals that are ruminants, that they will eat something, then bring it back up and chew it again and digest again, essentially. And some people are like, what does this have to do with cognition in human beings? Sometimes with our thoughts, we bring them back up again. We dwell on things. We revisit things that have happened to us. We don't let things go. And so sometimes in early adolescence, you will see a lot of rumination where, like, maybe you have a breakup, you have a fight with a friend, something didn't go well, and instead of moving on, you will keep thinking about it. You will keep revisiting. You will keep trying to think, well, what did I do wrong? You'll see this sort of rumination behavior, and you will just be very focused on your own issues, your own turmoil, your own conflicts and anxieties and worries. Another thing that we will see is the imaginary audience. Everybody's looking at me, even if they're not. It feels like everybody's looking at you all the time. They are all worried about what I am doing. And so this is a belief that others are watching constantly, taking note of appearance, ideas, and behaviors. It creates a high degree of self-consciousness. And this will explain things like, let's say they get bad haircut, big old pimple, and they'll be like, I can't go to school, everybody's staring at me. And it's like, look, everybody has these issues. Nobody cares about your hair. That's going to fall. That is not going to be received well. They're like, you don't get it. You do not get it. Everybody's looking at me. Of course, the thing is, they're all egocentric too. So they're all focused on themselves and worrying about their own issues. But there is that very real feeling sensation that everybody's looking at me. They're waiting for me to do something embarrassing, and they're going to call me out for it. All right, so the imaginary audience, very common, normal. Now, another thing is we have two fables. Fables, they use the kind of false beliefs that they seem real to that individual. One of them is the personal fable. The personal fable involves their belief that they are unique. I'm not like other girls. They are unique. They are different than other adolescents, other people their age. Their thoughts, feelings, and experiences are more wonderful or more awful than others. You wouldn't understand. This will lead to things like they might write poetry. Be like, no, you can't read it. It wouldn't make sense to you. It only makes sense to me. Even it's like, well, what is it about? It's about a breakup. Well, lots of people have been through a breakup, not like the one that I went through. I am the only one who's felt this. It also contributes to their sensation like their parents couldn't possibly understand them, even though their parents went through adolescence. Like, you wouldn't get it. You have never felt this. And it can also sometimes lead to misunderstandings with like song lyrics and things. They'll be like, wow, it's like they wrote this song directly for me. And like they're not recognizing, well, they're talking about a universal. This happens to everybody. Everybody's sitting around and going, wow, this sounds like me. So that's a common thing that will happen too. They feel like nobody else knows what they're feeling, what they've experienced. This has only happened to them. They are unique. They are special. Now, a related fable is the Invincibility Fable. Invincibility, nothing can harm me. This terrifies parents and any adult caring about adolescents. This is their conviction that they cannot be harmed by anything that might defeat a normal mortal. So this includes things like texting while driving. You can show them research and say, hey, you should not do this. This is dangerous. This is what will happen. They're like, I'll be fine. Drinking while driving, having unprotected sex, engaging in substance use, trying something that's known to be harmful, known to be dangerous. I've even heard adolescents say things like, well, there are some people who don't know how to drive drunk. I know how to drive drunk. I'm going to be okay. And it's like, whoa, problematic thinking that can lead to very harmful, risky behavior. And just presenting statistics is not going to get through there. That's not going to make them say, oh, I was totally wrong. I will stop behaving this way now. They'll be like, no, I'll be fine. That happens to like unlucky people. That happens to icky people. That doesn't happen to me. That's not going to happen. That's no way. All right. So that's a scary one when you see it at work, but the Invincibility Fable, nothing can harm me. All right. Now, these faulty beliefs, they should fade over time, with life experience. Hopefully they don't get harmed along the way. And eventually they will start to recognize the complexity of the world and see that, that they're not so special and things. And, no hate to anybody who's ever thought this way. As human beings, a lot of us have at some point thought this way when we were in adolescence.